Hey, so we're going to be talking about these three guys, Joe Budden and Mal and Rory, his co-host for the Joe Budden Podcast. They just did an episode talking about Kanye's 127 tweets about Drake and getting into it. It's a 48-minute and 52-second segment where they talk about Kanye and Drake. You may be familiar with the fact that I've fact-checked these dudes twice now on their discussions about Kanye, and they're awful when it comes to talking about Kanye. Most of the time, they don't have all of the facts right, or they have conclusions drawn from facts that are just completely illogical. And they present them in very forceful, strong, confident ways, which makes it seem like they really know what they're talking about, or that their point comes from this, understanding that they must have, especially given their intimacy to the hip-hop world, Joe's career that he had before podcasting. That gives them more weight when they talk about stuff like this, but so much bullshit. So much bullshit. In fact, I was just going to make this be one video, right, where I fact-checked this, but I'm going to have to make this 3 parts, 15-minute segments, going over 15-minute chunks of their 48 minutes, just because in the 15 minutes I covered, I ended up with a list of 17 points that were just annoyingly wrong. So we're going to get into that on this video and over the next couple days. So thank you for bearing with me as I break this up into multiple parts. I just wouldn't have been able to stay sane talking about them for 2 hours and the amount of bullet points I would have to write down and discuss. Before getting to that, there were 2 other little mini stories I wanted to go over. One, you may have heard Pusha T went on to The Daily Show and talked with Trevor Noah. There's a bunch of headlines coming out from this being like, Kanye's officially ditched the MAGA hat, which sounds great for most of us that aren't fans of Trump at all. But Pusha didn't quite say that. At one point, Trevor asked him about, Kanye's wearing this hat, and you disagree. You had said that it's a Ku Klux Klan hood of this generation. And when he talked about Kanye wearing the hat, Pusha goes he's not anymore. Have you seen him wear it? He's not wearing it anymore. Which isn't that Kanye's fully ditched it and will never wear it again, as some of these headlines are making it out to be. I think that's very assumptive. It could be true, but until we hear more about it, that's just not, I don't think, the takeaway from what Push said. It's just, we haven't seen Kanye wearing the hats, which suggests that he's distanced himself, had a change of opinion, but not that he's necessarily hates Trump now or thinks that he was wrong for wearing the hat or anything like that. So just be careful with some of those headlines. And the interview doesn't get much into Kanye, despite Trevor bringing it up a couple times. Pusha, this is him trying to talk about himself and his album. So instead of talking about Kanye a lot, he tends to bring it back to Daytona, or just maybe give some insight. Like when they mention mental health, all Pusha says is kind of that is an important thing. It's something we're becoming more aware of, in regards to Kanye, but in regards then to everybody as a whole. And Pusha then talks about how growing up, that just wasn't part of the conversation. It was something he had been ignorant of. So yeah, if you really want a Pusha T interview because you're just a Pusha T fan, you love Daytona, you love clips, you love whatever, then this is fun to watch. If you're wanting for Kanye information, you probably don't need to watch it, but still fun because Pusha T is such a charismatic personality. And then there was this article on DJ Booth, Drew Landry, writing about how Kanye West Ghost Town was the saving grace of his messy 2018. I'm a big Ye defender. Not just Kanye in general, but Ye, the album. I think that it's an album that, like 808s, like Yeezus, like The Life of Pablo, that people may not have liked it the first few times they heard it, or maybe even the first dozen, but 6 months out, a year out, 2 years out, people are going to be coming back to it and being like, oh shit, this is way better than I remember. That's just what we've seen happen time and again with Kanye albums. So this really sets up the fact that Drew found Ye to be lackluster, but Ghost Town is this amazing song, which Ghost Town is amazing. You can see the description here. Even the most hardcore of my fellow Kanye stans were lukewarm about Ye. Drew and I obviously don't know each other. His disappointing first solo album, Post Pablo. It wasn't necessarily a bad album, but it definitely wasn't on par with the rest of Kanye's discography, which is such a loaded statement to make because it really depends on how you're framing things. And there's a whole conversation to have on that. So I take offense to that. But Ye sounds like watching Michael Jordan score 14 points and dribble between his legs for 20 minutes. I disagree with that too, but it is hilarious as a description. But then Drew goes on to say that every time Kanye did something cringeworthy, playing this song actually helped me forgive and forget. When I was upset Kanye met with 45 in the Oval Office, I pressed play on Ghost Town. After Kanye went on an unaired rant defending 45 following his SNL appearance, again, I pressed play on Ghost Town. And when Kanye didn't drop Yandhi on time, of course, I pressed play on Ghost Town. I think the irony here, and it's just something I want to continuously express about Ye, is that he's finding solace in Ghost Town. That this, like, despite all the shit that Kanye's doing, Ghost Town is this meaningful thing. I just think it's funny because Ye is an album made about Kanye's behavior. And going from this place of darkness and how these dark thoughts drive him to act out and speak out about things that don't necessarily look good or sound good. And then he has these moments like on Would It Leave where he realizes what he had said or done. And then on No Mistakes, he tries to act better. Ghost Town, we get a breakthrough about his behavior. And then by Violent Crimes, we see the change in behavior and the understanding that's come from the breakthrough. And you see that structure. He talks about like the darkest thoughts are beside the most beautiful, that these beautiful thoughts come out of the darkness, which is why I thought about Killing You, Yikes, and All Mine are these dark soundscapes with these heavy kind of like not necessarily egregious lyrics, but like a lot of people pointed to All Mine as being like sexist or like very like way too sexual and misogynistic, and that's the point because it's supposed to contrast Violent Crimes. There's a reason why the first song on the album is called I Thought About Killing You and the last song is called Violent Crimes, right? Like there's connections there narratively, and you're watching this character progress through being somebody that wants to commit murder and then somebody that's looking at the violent crimes of others and being like, oh shit, like, we act that way because of this. In this case, it's how men treat women. That tends to be the arc of the album, which is why Yikes and All Mine are so, like, sexually focused and so ego-driven. Because then on Violent Crimes, Kanye's like, oh, yeah, like, guys act like this because they're monsters and kind of stupid. But then once they have daughters and appreciate women in a new way that they never did before, like they feel dumb and they like have this insight that they didn't have. So in this way, Kanye's kind of showing this cycle of his behavior, going from the dark thoughts that drive him to act in a certain way to then learning from them, which is something that he had expressed in interviews throughout the year and talking about politics, that he's starting out in a very ignorant place, but by expressing his views, even if they're wrong, even if they're ignorant, he's learning from all the feedback he gets from people, the positive feedback, the negative feedback. And through that process, he is refining, he's growing, he's becoming better. You can still have problems with that because Kanye, in the position that he's in, can have major influence by expressing opinions that aren't well-formed, right? But it still does get people talking. It does get people learning maybe about things. So while there's people that might be misinformed and take a negative thing from Kanye, there's also people that will learn from the ignorance that Kanye puts out, and Kanye himself is also learning. So I don't know. I just think it's funny to appreciate Ghost Town, but not appreciate how Ghost Town fits into this cycle of behavior while being upset about the cycle of behavior and finding comfort in Ghost Town. And that's not to say that you need to like Ye, but I just hope it helps people appreciate what the album's doing. And if they love a song like Ghost Town, can listen to the album and be like, oh, I love how everything on the album builds to Ghost Town and what it means when we come out of Ghost Town and come on to Violent Crimes. And Kanye has this new perspective on that song, or that the character of Ye has a new perspective when we get to Violent Crimes because of what happened on Ghost Town. So intercontextuality. Whew, okay. So let's get into the Joe Budden podcast and the first 15 minutes of talking points. So these guys start off talking about that Kanye tweeted Drake taking food out of his children's mouths. And they're all three pretty upset about that statement, as they take it very literal, right? That this is going to somehow stop these kids from like eating or having money. And the three of them don't like that. And yeah, it's kind of absurd. We think of Kanye as exceedingly wealthy because he is. So as they say, there's never going to really be a day that these kids aren't like wealthy, right? But I think it just gets more into the idea of what wealth a family could have, right? Like you could make the case that if somebody has like $400,000 a year job, do they really need any more? Shouldn't they just kind of be happy with that? It's like, well, you can do more with the more that you have. Like you don't want to limit your family. You don't want to limit your family over time. That money can be used up. So if you have 20 million, is that enough? If you have 50, if you have 100, if you have a billion, is that enough? I get how absurd that sounds in a way, because it's like, yeah, there's a point of just being happy with what you have. But at the same time, like, I don't know, that should be my call. That shouldn't be like somebody else stopping me from making money, especially if it's somebody that like knows me, has met my kids, right? And then they're talking shit about my business, and that's starting to affect numbers, or they're trying to affect my numbers. I get having that territorialism about it, and that it's more about just like, I'm doing this for my family and what my family can potentially be and do and have for generations to come. Not just like my kids, but their kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. And just standing up for that. Yeah, he framed it in a way that's like, oh, my kids won't eat. But that's just semantics for something larger. But they just hone in on the absurdity of thinking that like the kids could ever be poor, which I think it gets into more of that, right? Yeah. I think if whoever runs their podcast said to them, like, would you take less money because, you know, you're all pretty wealthy now, they'd all be like, no, fuck no. Like, we deserve more money. We do these numbers. Like, you're not going to limit me and my spending power, or like the wealth that I could accrue for myself, my family, etc. The next thing they talk about is they think that Kanye is just talking about sicko mode because he hadn't heard it until the day before. And now he's finally listening to it. And Mal's just like, nah, he's heard it. Which is going to be a trend, because whenever they talk about anything that Kanye maybe didn't know or maybe has done, Mal's just like, no. He assumes like the worst case scenario for what Kanye did know or didn't do or did do every time. So he's just like, nah, I believe that he heard it, that he picked this time because he's going to promote something, and that's all that it was. Completely doesn't believe anything that Kanye could have not heard that song until that day. At one point, Joe mentions why Kanye and Travis, like why Kanye thought he and Travis would be so close. And they mention like, you know, Kanye and Travis have worked together in the past. Like Travis has written for Kanye. So then that leads into, that leads into one of my favorite parts, is that Joe starts saying that like Travis was a big part about the last time Kanye was on, right? And that since he and Travis haven't been working together for a while, that's why Kanye's music has dipped. And he's just like, whenever the last time Kanye was on, Travis was part of that. And Rory, I think, tries to point out that it was Yeezy. They call Yeezus Yeezy like 7 times, and they're like, well, Yeezy, he was on Yeezy. And Joe's like, well, Yeezy wasn't an up album. Like, Yeezy's a bad album. So it couldn't have been that one. Like, it had to be before that. And Rory comes in and says it went from Kid Cudi to Travis. And Joe's like, yes, that. But Travis wasn't part of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, at least to any degree of my knowledge, which maybe that makes me a hypocrite. But as far as I know, Travis came in and had the major influence on Yeezus, and that was that. So Joe makes a statement that like Travis was a huge part of the last successful Kanye album, but then says it wasn't Yeezus. I assume he would say it wasn't Life of Pablo, and the album before that would have been, I don't think it would have said Cruel Summer or Watch the Throne. Yeah, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which was more like Cudi, Pusha T, other people that were there in Hawaii. Not like Travis Scott's creative genius coming in and helping Kanye ascend to bold new heights that he had never been before. So it's this false idea that like Travis Scott had a huge part in a successful phase of Kanye's career, successful by Joe's standards, even though Yeezus is becoming such a beloved album at this point, despite how maligned it was by Kanye fans for the first like 4 years of his existence. It's finally started to turn that corner and be considered a classic part of Kanye's discography. So they don't even know that. So then what else? Mal discusses Crazy Out of Touch, thinks it's all an act. So they talk about like Kanye being out of touch from things, maybe not knowing about recent music, getting back to maybe him not listening to Sicko Mode. And Mal just goes on this rant saying that it's all an act. Like Kanye not knowing about things, Kanye being like crazy, blah, blah, blah. It's just all an act. It's all promotion. He only does it when he wants to promote something. Like, nah, he knows exactly what he's doing, which to me reeks of somebody that dismisses mental health. Because he like straight up says like the acting crazy, it's all part of this act that Kanye has. So yeah, all of it he just dismisses as these like nefarious schemes of Kanye. Don't even know Yeezus, Kid Cudi to Travis. Rory starts playing Stop Trying to Be God from Astroworld. And is like, who do you think that's about? And they're all like, yeah, that's about Kanye. Like, what was Kanye thinking? Not thinking that, like, Travis and him were good. Travis is making this record like this. What's the reason they think that that's about Kanye? Like, that could be Travis self-reflecting about himself on the album and dealing with his tendencies to try to be God and think larger than life. It could be about Kanye, too. But they just automatically assume it's about Kanye without citing any lyrics, without citing any information, just from the idea that they don't think Kanye and Travis are close. Not even thinking about that, like, Travis is married to, has a kid with, like, Kylie Jenner, and is maybe around the Kardashian household a lot, that Kanye and Travis have known each other for over 5 years and worked on music together for over 5 years. Like, damn. What else do we got? Mal rolls his eyes almost every time they say anything about Kanye. Rory brings up the hypocrisy of Infrared Sicko Mode. So that Kanye produced Infrared for Pusha T, on which Pusha goes after Drake when Kanye and Drake were friends, and that Kanye is upset that Travis let Drake diss Kanye on Travis's album. Or on Travis's song. I get that argument. I also, if I'm playing both sides like devil's advocate, because I'm not saying this is how it is, I'm not just blindly trying to defend Kanye, but getting into the idea of, I guess, the nuance of the situation. Sicko Mode is Travis Scott's song, right? He's making sure that the music of it is what he wants. He's making sure the lyrics are what he wants. He's making sure the song's saying what he wants. When it comes to Kanye producing Pusha T's album, Kanye's emphasis is on the music, right? And he's going to have his concept. He's going to work with Pusha to make sure that it's doing what Pusha wants it to do. But I don't know what Kanye knew of Pusha's lyrics, right? Is Pusha coming in and being like, yo, this song's about Drake, I'm dissing him, or here's this verse and Kanye's listening to it? We know that Kanye works with a team, and that a lot of the time he has his concepts and then delegates out to the people to arrange them, bring it together, right? It's almost like the architect isn't the one that builds the house. So I'm not saying that this couldn't be hypocritical. I'm just saying there's a situation where Kanye could have built the beat to Infrared and given it to his team to then put together when Pusha had the lyrics. Or that Kanye could have heard some of the lyrics, maybe not the Drake disses, and just put the beat together around that and then let his team make the finished song. I'm sure that that maybe sounds crazy, that Kanye wouldn't have heard the final product before it came out, but he also had a week until Ye was supposed to come out, and then another week until Kids See Ghosts was supposed to come out, and he was working on all of those albums at once. So it's also the time that if Kanye was ever not going to hear the finished product of what he worked on, that would be the time it would happen. So I don't know if that's necessarily hypocritical of Kanye, because it's not his track. If it had been Infrared on Ye or Infrared on Kids See Ghosts and Pusha T was making disses at Kanye, like, yes. Even then, Kanye had apologized, saying like he should have been more aware of it and not let Pusha diss Drake on a beat that he had made. He didn't comment on the process at all. He didn't comment on if he knew beforehand or was aware of it. But again, it's my issue is just them assuming what Kanye did and knew and taking it to this place that Kanye is blatantly in the wrong, rather than thinking it could be this other situation where it's less his fault, or making any distinction between the two situations. We then get, let's see, says Kanye sounds physically afraid of Drake. So just how Kanye was tweeting about Drake threatening him, they're assuming that Drake, or that Kanye feels like physically threatened by Drake. Which I don't know where you get that from. I mean, he's saying like, you're threatening like me, you're threatening my family, like I have a family, but it doesn't seem like Kanye's necessarily afraid of Drake, or that Drake's going to come and beat him up. Like, please Drake, I'm so sorry, please don't beat me up. He's just saying like, I don't want to have to worry about this, I don't want to have to do this. And I just think that goes to the flaw in their perspective, that glass half full, glass half empty reveals how you kind of view things in the world. So if you view the glass as half empty, or if you have more of a pessimistic point of view, you're going to view the glass as half empty. If you have more of a positive view, you'll view it as half full. Tone in written form. Written words, the tone of written words often has that similar quality, where if you're afraid that somebody's angry at you, you might assume that they're saying something angry in a text that they send or in an email that you get. Or somebody could say something just very straightforward, like, I'll see you at 9, but they don't include an exclamation point, they don't include anything else, and you're like, oh no, do they not want to go? I'm so worried now. When they're thinking like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm just going to send this text, I'm going to go get ready. There's always miscommunication from assuming tone. So here they just, because they have a negative view, all three of them, of Kanye, assume that Kanye's tone in these tweets is one of being like physically afraid of Drake. And then they talk about Kanye saying, we all know somebody, right? Getting like, we all know somebody that will do this thing or will get this thing done. I think getting into violence, like we all know somebody that will go and like do something violent. And Joe's immediate thing is just like, if you say that, then you don't know anybody. So like, obviously Kanye doesn't know anybody if he's saying that. And it's like, where the fuck do you get that from? that just because Kanye's saying, like, we all know somebody that could do something, that proves that Kanye knows nobody, that he just doesn't have anybody he could go to if he needed shit done. Again, it's just bullshit assumptive and negative towards Kanye because these three guys hate Kanye, which is fine if they just want to say they hate Kanye, but they try to position it like they're being fair and that it's Kanye that's the problem. And they're just these three logical dudes that like are burdened by Kanye being such a problem. Like, nah, they just hate Kanye. That's it. J Prince. So they mentioned like Kanye asking why Drake doesn't talk this way to J Prince and saying like, you know, that says to me, that's saying alarm bells because like we know that J Prince was the one that said that Drake had this diss track of Kanye. So like if he's mentioning J Prince, you know, that's on Kanye's mind. It's about respecting your elders. And J Prince is close to Drake. He's an elder that Drake respects. And Kanye's saying, you would never say anything like this to J Prince. You would never challenge him in this way. You would never write lyrics about him in this way. So why do you write lyrics about me this way? It's not that J Prince is on his mind because Kanye's worried about this diss track that never came out and doesn't want Drake to release it. It's just like, yo, respect your elders. That's why I mentioned Snoop. Snoop's been talking mad shit about Kanye for months. Like egregious shit about Kanye. And Kanye's never said anything. He just says, we love Snoop. I love Snoop. Wears a pro Snoop shirt. Never trashes Snoop because he has respect for his elders. Kanye's Drake's elder. But Drake feels that he doesn't have to respect Kanye that way. And more so needs to step over Kanye to get his place in kind of the kingdom. He even said after Watch the Throne came out that like the throne's up for grabs. That's not like I'm going to build my own throne, have my own kingdom. It's just like, nah, I'm going to take these old fuckers' throne. Like that's combative, right? That's not respecting like your elders. That's looking at peers that you want to like kill in the way of like, I'm going to do better than them and make them look foolish. So they missed the whole point about why Kanye mentioned J Prince just because they wanted to get into their conspiracy theory anti-Kanye bullshit. Then they get into the fact that Mal doesn't think that Drake called Kanye at all. Like they mentioned that Drake called and he's just like, I don't think he called. Like, no. And then Rory gets into saying that he doesn't think that Travis called, and Mal's like, I don't think Travis called either, that it's all wrestling. Kanye's just making this up. He wants to promote shit, which that's crazy to me too. So they're not even entertaining that like maybe the calls did happen. It's just like, no, didn't call. Kanye's just a liar. He's making shit up. Joe did have a take that I was like, yes, thank you, Joe, which is when they were talking about what threatened meant. Like he's saying, I don't think that Drake or Travis threatened him the way that like we think about threatening, but it's more just like the general, like they were telling me to like stop. They were telling me like they were trying to control me. And that's the threat more so than like, we're going to break your fucking kneecaps if you don't shut the fuck up. But they just don't even, those two don't think that the call even happened. So Mal doesn't think that Drake bought seats at Pusha's show. And they mentioned the fact that like it was standing room only at the venue, which all I saw from the concert was like the standing room in front of the stage. Yeah, you can't buy those as rows. I don't know if there were seats elsewhere that were bought. I don't know if Kanye's just thinking about like Fitty buying seats at I forget the guy's name. Whoever 50 Cent beefs with, he bought 200 seats at the dude's show so they would be empty. So maybe with that on the mind, or maybe Pusha had told Kanye about it and Kanye's using the information that Pusha told him, not knowing if it's true or not. I don't know if Drake did that, but they don't believe that Drake did that, which even has Joe kind of like, yo, you two won't believe Drake does anything. He seemed to buy more into that being plausible, but I don't know if it's plausible or not. The thing that I do know is that Kanye talked about that kid being in critical condition. Mal says that nobody's in critical condition, nobody's in the hospital. He doesn't believe that. We have articles. If this stupid ad would go away, there are articles on websites that talk about concert fight, person in critical condition. One person has life-threatening injuries. Yeah, one person has life-threatening injuries after a stabbing at a Pusha T concert in Toronto. Pusha T blames Drake for brawl that left 3 concert goers hospitalized. So, like, here we have factual evidence of something that happened, and still Mal's sitting there all bundled up, being like, nope, don't believe it, Kanye's a liar. Like, you have no credibility at this point with anything that you're going to say about Kanye, because you can't even accept basic facts are true. Like, you could argue with the fact, like, did Drake do this? Yes or no? Like, have an opinion on that. But when you're rejecting the fact that somebody even went to the hospital, like, come the fuck on. Like, wow. Almost there. This is the last one for today. But Mal doesn't believe anything Ye says. Yeah, so he talks about, like, I don't believe anything. It's all wrestling. Kanye just wants to push product. He has shoes coming out. He has something coming out. Like, none of this is, like, real or believable. No. And then he talks about how Drake had responded by putting, like, crying face emojis on an Instagram story and saying, like, now Drake had posted those, and I believe what he was saying there was, like, this, that he's talking about, that he was trying to get the sample cleared, and he assumes all this meaning from Drake having emojis in an Instagram story of crying eyes, and what Drake means from that, and the intent that Drake has from that, and what Drake's saying, while with everything that Kanye says, he's just like, no, can't believe it, can't buy it, nothing there. But with fucking emojis from Drake, that's suddenly expressing all of this stuff, which just goes to the bias of perspective, where it doesn't matter what the facts are. It's not that Mal's looking at what Kanye's saying and saying, like, could this be true? Let me get more information. It's that Mal's looking at what's being said and saying, what do I think based on this? That's the reality. If I think it's bullshit, then it's bullshit. If I see Drake provide no context for anything whatsoever, I know exactly what he meant because this is how I feel about it. Yeah, so that's just 15 minutes of this. We'll get into the next 15 minutes tomorrow, and then the last 15 minutes then. Or who knows, maybe the last 15 minutes won't be so painful, and it'll just be 2 parts, but that's all I could handle for today. But if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, leave them below. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying the videos and want to support the channel, the easiest way is just following, subscribing. This isn't Twitter. Subscribe and liking, as it lets YouTube know that this channel has information that people are enjoying, so then they recommend it to more people. And I get like $1 a video. So let's see if we can get that up to $2 a video. How nice would that be? But thank you for watching. Talk soon.